What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today the goal is to get the 4B11T engine that we built for the Evo 10 last weekend. We want to get this thing completely buttoned up, all timed, everything together, and maybe even get a turbo, intake manifold, whatever we can, mocked up and mounted to the engine so we can see how it's going to look, see how it's going to fit. I've never built one of these before, so we're kind of learning this together. There's still a lot we got to do to the Evo before we get this engine dropped in, but at least we can have this done, buttoned up, and waiting for whenever we are ready to get this thing dropped in and running. If you guys remember from last video, we were actually torquing down these cam cap bolts, and this one snapped in half. So I got some new ones, some OEM Mitsubishi bolts, so hopefully we can get these in, they don't snap, and we can get them torqued to spec. After hitting these again with the torque wrench, trying to get them to 22 foot-pounds, I think it's just literally too much for these bolts. So I went to what I know is tight, and we're gonna leave it at that. I'm pretty confident with where it's at now. There is this little plug that sits behind your timing chain area. Make sure you guys don't forget that. Just go ahead and thread it in nice and tight. Now that we got that plug in, we can go ahead and start timing this engine. So, starting with the cams, you can see in here, there's a line right on the gear and a line on the gear there. I put those cams in like that on purpose. That way they're really close to being in time. Essentially what we need to do is get these lines to point each other, and it's gonna line up with this head surface right there. So we can grab a 14mm socket and turn these the rest of the way and get our cams timed up. Now that we have our cams lined up, we now need to get the engine in top dead center. And to do that, we need our timing cover and our balancer. Now you can see our balancer's a little bit rusty, a little crusty, straight out the trailer. Been sitting in Jersey for about 2 years untouched. So I am gonna get a new one because I just probably brushed off enough rust to unbalance the thing. So yeah, let's get this thing cleaned up, and this thing cleaned up a little bit more before we slap it on to our fresh and clean engine. And then essentially what we're gonna do is just line the mark on the balancer up with this T, and obviously once that's on the crank, it's gonna get us in top dead center. So as you can see now, we got this little mark on the balancer lined up with the T on the timing cover. So we know that we are now in top dead center, and we can go ahead and get our chain, guides, and tensioner on. Here we have the new oil pump, and I believe these are the 3 bolts that hold it down, and I was told they go to 20 foot-pounds. This is the front gear that goes on it. Now I'm still looking for the bolt for that gear. Yeah, there's bolts everywhere, guys, and you guys know I didn't take this thing apart, so every bolt, I have no idea where it goes, and most of them aren't really labeled. I tried to relabel some of them myself based on what I think they are, but yeah, there's another box on the other side of the Evo filled with bolts. We can get the oil pump on, and then I might make a few phone calls and see if we can figure out what that bolt looks like, and then I'm also looking for timing cover bolts as well. And sure, I could get any bolt that I find that fits these threads to fit in there, which there is a lot, but I want to make sure it is the right length and the right bolt, so that way we know the torque is going to be correct going into the oil pump. Those bolts went up to 20 foot-pounds, no issue, so I'm not really sure what's up with the cam cap, but all I know is they're tight. Alright, so coming over to timing chain land again. We got a few kind of gold links on here. And essentially what we're doing is we need to get those gold links on the little dots on the cam gears. So I'm lining those up right now. Once you get those lined up, there's one more gold link down at the bottom, and that's gonna line up with the dot on your little crank gear down here. Just like so. And then this is gonna get nice and tensioned up by our tensioners. Just like that. So you have a gold link here that lines up with the dot on the cam gear. Same thing on this gear. This one, it does have a little bit of paint on it, but yeah, you see that link lines up with the dot. And then down here on your crank pulley, you can see there's a little dot, if this would focus, right here. And this link is just gonna line up with that. Obviously it is a little loose right now because we don't have our guides in here, but once we get our guides and tensioner in, this should be nice and tight. So now that we have all of the guides on, we just want to go over everything and make sure everything is still in the right place. So that link is still on the dot. Come over to this cam, same deal, link is still on the dot. Come down to our crank gear and you can still see that link is on the dot on the crank gear. So with all that in, all these guides are just hand tight at the moment. So we're just gonna go ahead and pull our little grenade pin. And now everything should be nice and taut. The last thing we have to do before timing cover goes on is just go ahead and torque down all of our guide bolts, and they all go to 17 inch-pounds. Now, I don't have something that goes that low, so just a little mini ugga-dugga on the ratchet, and we'll be good to go. So I went through all these bolts, and I went through all these bolts, and I went through all of these bolts. And I organized what I could, what I kind of figured what went where. I labeled, you know, maybe under hood, maybe transmission. Oh, we got more transmission, more hood, you know, just kind of went through and labeled what I think goes where. Maybe it'll help me out, but I finally found the timing chain cover bolts that I've been looking for no kidding 2 hours. But hopefully we can get this thing bolted up now. Now before we thread these in, I'm gonna take them to the little brush on the grinder because as you can see, they're a little crusty. So we're gonna clean them up before we thread them in the block and botch up the threads. A few minutes later, bolts are all cleaned up. Are they perfect? No, but I'm confident we're not gonna have an issue with those. So moving on, we are gonna be running all new seals in the car, including front and rear main seal. So let's go ahead and get the old one popped out of the timing cover, and we'll get that one pressed in. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and get some RTV on this timing cover. Make sure you guys don't forget these little areas in the middle. These need some RTV as well. Once we got all the sealing on, we can now go ahead and get the timing cover onto the engine. We're just gonna hand tighten all the bolts and let the RTV cure. You're gonna see in the upcoming clip, I'm installing a little bolt with a crush washer on it. You do need that crush washer, but I did go back later and replace that bolt with a normal flange bolt just to prevent any leaks. As we let the timing cover cure, we can flip the engine over and do the oil pan. I do have to get it cleaned up real quick, but other than that, same thing. We'll just get some RTV on there and get it sealed up to the block and let it cure. Well, as I'm cleaning up this surface about to get the oil pan on, I notice down in here, there's a broken bolt. And I believe this bolt here and this bolt here, I think it's these two, are brackets for the AC compressor. So I kind of need that hole. So I'm not really sure how I'm gonna get this out. I think the only way is to drill it, but then it's gonna screw up the threads. So, yeah, I think that's the only way. Alrighty boys, check this out. So this is the good hole. That's the hole that wasn't all messed up. Now watch this. We good to go. Essentially what I did is I just drilled this out until we were pretty much right to the threads. And then I took a tap the same size and kind of feathered it through a decent ways until it kind of piled up all the metal here. And then I ran one more drill bit down through, and this is what I came up with. We were actually able to almost get the entire bolt without getting into the threads in the block. Now, the top threads are kind of messed up from previously, but we'd still have some bottom threads. So depending on how long the bolt is, we should be good. I can always get a longer bolt. And if it doesn't hold, then we can just drill it out and put a bigger bolt through. But for right now, yeah, it seems to be holding up quite well. Now, before we get the oil pan on, now that that's all solved, I do just want to blow all this out and kind of clean it up with a rag. I tried my best to plug all these holes with rags so no metal shavings from drilling this out would go in there. But, you know, there could always be one or two. So I'm going to try my best to get everything out, and then we can move on with sealing the pan. Oh my gosh, guys. I wish this was a joke, but yeah, we got another broken bolt, and that's an actual oil pan bolt. So, yep, got to figure that one out real quick too. The threads on that one look okay, so I'm hoping maybe I can get a hole in it and back thread it out with a screwdriver maybe. I don't know. I guess I'm gonna get to work on that bolt and I'll get back to you guys with the results. About 30 minutes later, we got that hole cleared out and got lucky again. We were able to save it, so we can still use the same bolt. I don't know how I managed to do that, but we got it all out of there. Here was the other one. Now, I just cleaned this off one more time and I did a deep search to make sure we didn't have any more broken off bolts, and I think we're good, finally. So let's get some RTV on the pan. We get some RTV on the block, especially like on these creased areas. You can see right here where he was pounding on it to get the oil pan off. Want to make sure you go a little bit thicker in those areas just to prevent leaks. But yeah, let's get this thing on once and for all. Timing cover cinched down. It is a little while later now, so we're probably good to tighten down our oil pan as well. I did put these two bolts in just, you know, to help it seal. Obviously, these are gonna come out. These don't actually go here. This is where that AC compressor mount sits. And yeah, everything we should be able to torque down. This one over here, I'm probably gonna go a little lighter on. I'm not sure how much torque it's gonna hold. I'm probably just gonna go a little more than hand tight on that bad boy. But everything else, we could get down somewhat the spec. These I just give little ugga-duggas, and yeah, should be good for the oil pan. Consider me surprised, that bolt actually held up to my ugga-dugga. So happy with that. All bolts are pretty much down to the same ugga-dugga. And I think the last thing we need is a bolt here. This, it's like a view to the tensioner is what I'm getting out of this. So I think as long as we get a bolt with, it's gotta be short because you don't want to hit the tensioner through that hole. You can see it literally threads in on the timing cover. So I'm pretty sure it's just a little view or something like that. I don't know. But a little bolt with a crush washer should hold that from leaking anything. These bolts here I did just torque down. We'll take them out tomorrow once everything is dried up and cured. All right, it's the next morning now. Last night we made some really solid progress getting this long block complete. A few obstacles that we had to get through with those bolts being snapped off in the block, but we got lucky, we got those out, and now pretty much the last thing to complete the long block would be the valve cover. So I have the valve cover flipped upside down here, and we need to clean this out, and I also plan on powder coating the valve cover. The problem with these is they have these baffles in here, and they're all riveted on, so you can't really clean underneath them. In my case, this valve cover sat in a wood shop for 2 years and was covered in sawdust. So yeah, I'm not gonna put this thing back on there covered in sawdust. Also, if we sandblast it before we powder coat it, you're not gonna be able to get the sand out of there. So we need to drill out each of these rivets. I'm just gonna try to get a drill bit just big enough so we get the head off the rivet and we're able to pop the baffles off. Then we have to drill and tap little holes so we can just replace these baffles with little screws and some Loctite. So with that said, I'm gonna get to work, start drilling these out, and then I'm gonna order up a drill bit. I don't have a 2.4 millimeter drill bit, which I guess is what you need if you wanna tap M5. So I'm gonna get one of them on order and we can get to that some other day. And there we have it. We got the first baffle off. Now obviously everything has to be cleaned because there's metal shavings everywhere, but no big deal, we got access to everything now. So with these little holes, essentially what we're gonna do is file them down flush with the valve cover itself, and then run a 4.2 millimeter drill bit through it, and then each of them will be tapped out for an M5 bolt, and then we'll be able to just essentially bolt these back on instead of having the rivets in them. So now we just gotta go ahead and get this baffle off as well, so catch you guys in a minute. I've gone ahead and got the baffles and the valve cover all cleaned up, got as much of the metal shavings as I can out. Not a huge deal because this is all gonna probably go through the strip tank once it gets powder coated and then sandblasted, and it's gonna have to be cleaned again, especially after we drill and tap all the holes. So it is clean for now. I am content with it, and I'll be able to slap it on the engine just to mock it up. Now, you might be wondering, what the heck? Well, we got an MAP exhaust manifold kind of just mocked up on here with the FP Black that I think I mentioned that we'd be running. So hopefully this is gonna put off enough sauce for our liking in the old Evo. But yeah, I just wanted to mock everything up. I am probably gonna be buying all new bolts because these are rusted, half of them are stripped, cross-threaded, whatever. Same thing with studs. We'll figure something out there, but yeah. Pretty cool to see this thing start coming together. Let's get the valve cover slapped on and we'll go from there. As it sits right now is about as far as we can get on this engine currently. Obviously the valve cover, the turbo, and the manifold are just mocked up. Nothing is actually sealed together yet. But once we get the valve cover powder coated and all of those baffles back in, we can go ahead and seal that down. Now coming back over to the car, we need to get this car more centralized in the garage. One, because I have no room to work here, and two, it's really dark. So I'm pretty sure I made the decision to paint this entire car. and you're gonna find out more of the reason in the next couple videos. But yeah, we need to get everything stripped out of the engine bay, including all the wiring harness, fuse box, AC compressor. I'm pretty sure everything has to come out. If I can leave the AC compressor in, that would be nice, but more than likely, everything's got to come out. That way we can spray the bay. Because if we're going to spray the entire car, we might as well spray the bay, especially since everything's already out of it. So it only makes sense. So we got to play a little bit of musical cars to get this thing where I want it. And then I also want to pull the drive shaft off. That way it's not clinking, clanking every time I try to roll this thing around. That would be really, really nice. So let's get to work, make this happen. I'm just gonna start breaking everything down. I'm gonna take the hood off, everything out of the bay, the fenders, everything's coming off, and it's gonna go straight to the trailer, AKA our good old portable storage unit. All right, so I spent the last bit of time just trying to tear down the side and get this wiring harness out of the way. And the goal was to pull this harness all the way out of the car. That way we wouldn't have to worry about it. But I realized that for whatever reason, there's no bulkhead anywhere in this bay for the main harness coming in from the firewall. So in order to take this all the way out, you have to unplug all the connections under the dash in the car, which is quite a bit of work, and I believe you may have to pull the dash out. So I just talked to the painter, and we should be able to keep all this stuff in here and be all right. But I have Seth here, and we're gonna show you guys. Look at this mess. And then Seth, you want to crack just the lid, just be careful with it. I was hoping there was a bulkhead in here, but I don't know if you guys can see that. Definitely not a bulkhead and a whole lot of mom spaghetti, so that ain't gonna work. Kind of unfortunate because I wanted to clean this up as much as possible. But after getting off the phone with the guy who's gonna help me paint this car, I can actually leave a lot of this stuff in here. We can just mask a lot of it off. So apparently our ABS, the harness, I can kind of tuck underneath the firewall, and AC, power steering, everything can really stay in here. So what we really need to focus on is just the felt that kind of goes around the outside of the bay. Try to get all that off as best as we can, or at least pulled away from the body, and essentially just clear it up so as he sprays, it can reach that area. Anything that covers the firewall has to come off, but for the most part, apparently a lot of it can stay, which is good news. Alright guys, I'm not trying to call anyone out, but if you guys can't get your skirt on, please don't screw through your fender to try to get it on in the worst spot possible, especially if you're in a rusty state. I mean, Yeah, don't do that. We have new stuff anyways, so I don't really care, but yeah, not ideal. Just makes it a pain in the butt for everyone. Also, peep the paint job. We made some solid progress on the Evo. We got pretty much everything cleared off both sides of the bay. I even got the AC compressor out. I didn't think it was gonna be as easy as it was to pull that out, but yeah, it was literally just one bolt and came out from the firewall. You can actually see it back there. Let me brighten it up as much as I can for you. One bolt, take that off, and the lines just slide out of there. The last thing I wanna do tonight is just take the vacuum and clean everything up. It's pretty crusty throughout, so we'll get everything cleaned up. As far as the ABS pump and the wiring harness that I have up on the windshield, like I said, I did talk to the guy that's gonna help me paint this thing, and he said that we could just leave it. The wiring harness will just tuck down underneath, and the ABS, we can get around that and shouldn't be a big deal. I will let you guys know, I did try to take the ABS pump off, and literally everything is corroded and stuck to that thing. And if I try anymore, I'm just gonna round out all the little bolts that hold in the lines. And I don't feel like dealing with that tonight, so I think we're just gonna leave that in and we'll be able to get around it. I don't think it'll be an issue. So let's go ahead, get everything cleaned up, and I think we'll call it a night. Well, still have a lot of prep work to do all around the entire car, but the engine bay is getting really, really close. I'm happy with it. We still obviously have to clean everything and get all this little dirt and grime off, but shouldn't be too big of a deal. But I am gonna wrap up this video right here. We made some solid progress this weekend. We got a lot more to do, but I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, peace out. See y'all later.